talk about voting models. What are the voting models? Well, those are the rules by which the outcome of the election is going to be determined. We're going to start with the majority rule. It's a policy, it's a situation in which a policy or candidate is going to win if he gets more than 50% of all votes. If there are more than two policies, a winner may not be found by a majority rule. So that creates problems. All choices have to be narrowed to two. Most of the time, there are more than two choices. So we can come up with the following solution. We can identify two winners and have a runoff between them. It could be expensive, but it could be done. Also, what it tells us that the order is going to matter in this case. Why is that the case? Let's look at the example. Let's say that a city wants to create a new park. There are three possible locations for the park: east, west, and central. There are also three different types of voters with different preferences. There's 35% of young voters who prefer south to central and central to east. There's 45% of smart voters. Their first choice is central location, second choice is east location, and third choice is south location. And there's also 20% of old voters who prefers east to south and south to central. So let's see how we can use majority rule to determine the winner of this election. Obviously, the majority rule is not gonna work if we have all three policies running against each other, because south would get 35%, central will get 45%, and east will get 20%. And our majority rule tells us that you need more than 50% of the votes in order to determine the winner. Let's see why we actually have a problem. Supposedly, in the first round of the election, we have south versus central. What's gonna happen? South is the first choice for young voters, so young will vote for south. Central is the first choice for smart voters, so smart will vote central. For old voters, neither one of those is the first choice, but now east is no longer in the competition, and south is a better option for them than central. As a result, they would vote south. So now young voters vote south, old voters vote south, so south will get 55% and win this election. What if we have an election in which central was running against east? Central is preferred option to east for young voters, so they will vote central. Central is preferred policy to east for smart voters, so they will also vote central. And east is preferred policy to central for old voters. Since young and smart vote central, central is going to beat east. So if south beats central and central beats east, south is better than central and central is better than east, then technically south should beat east. But what if we had the election between south and east location? Let's see who would vote for which option. South is better than east for young voters. East is better than south for smart voters. And east is also better than south for old voters. As a result, smart voters and old voters vote for east, and east is going to win against south since it gets 65% of the votes against 35. So here we have a problem. Depending on which options we select for the first round of the election, we may change the outcome of this election. There's a different rule. So another solution is to use a different rule. Let's say we call it plurality rule. It means that the choice is going to win if it has the most votes. It doesn't have to be more than 50%, it just has to be more than any other vote. We have the same setup for young, smart, and old voters who have to vote either South or Central or East. And since young voters will vote for South, smart voters will vote for Central, old voters will vote for East, the Central policy is going to get the most votes. So in this case, we chose the winner by plurality rule. The problem is that the winner may not be approved by a majority. So in this case, 55% voted against Central, yet Central is still going to win. Border rule. What we do in border rule, we rank all possible outcomes. We assign points to each rank, and then we calculate the total score an option receives. So let's assign 3 points to the first choice, 2 points to the second choice, and 1 point to the third choice. So whatever option is better, that option gets the most points. So outcome with the most points is going to win. Let's calculate the points for Central location. For young voters, Central receives 2 points. And since there's 35% of them, it's the same as if we had 35 people. We take 2 points multiplied by 35. That's the score that Central receives from young voters. Central receives 3 points from smart voters, and there's 45% of them. So 3 times 45 plus Central receives 1 point from old voters, and there's 20% of them, so we do 1 times 20 equals to 225. We do the same calculations for South and East, and we calculate their total scores for each of their options. And here we can see that Central is a winner because it earns more points than any other policy. It just happens here that our border rule matches the plurality rule, but it's not always the case.